Hey guys, Alex Sutherland here, and I am going to be concluding my series on multi-street GTO theory and practice today. Throughout this whole video, I'm going to be assuming that you guys watched parts 1 through 3, so if you haven't done so already, go watch those, come back and watch this afterwards, you'll get a lot more out of it. Today, we've been going through kind of the theory and practice of multi-street GTO decision making, and today we're going to wrap up with the most practice-oriented section. We're basically going to be looking purely at computational solutions to out-of-position turn play on wet boards in 3-bet pots, and really diving into the strategy, trying to come up with concrete, actionable ideas of how you guys can understand GTO play in those spots and implement stronger strategies in your games at the tables. Now, we're going to be looking at the same scenario we looked at in part 3. I'll briefly refresh you guys' memory on that, but for details, rewatch part 3. We're looking at a 6-max button versus big blind situation, 3-bet pot, 100 chip effective stacks, and the board came Jack 9-6 suited, and the big blind c-bet the flop and got called, and now we're on the turn and wondering how to play. And in part 3, I showed you some kind of 3-betting range, c-betting range, calling range that we used to get to where we are, and those ranges are all going to be identical. So let's quickly review our solution. Here's a scenario like before: 34 chip starting pot, 83 chip effective stacks. We're assuming a 5 of diamonds came, and the in-position player's range, this is calling a c-bet range, so he's got some nut flush draws, a whole bunch of kind of gut shot plus pair kind of hands, the nut straight just hit here, and some jack hands, some overcards, pretty standard stuff. And the villain c-betting range, all his overpairs, some of his airs. When the squares are not all the way filled in, that represents a mixed strategy. How full it is how often we're betting it. Gutters plus nut straight, pairs, 2-pair, etc. So that's our scenario, and as we saw, this solution, we considered letting the villain overbet shove to open. That didn't actually increase his EV at all significantly, so we focused on this kind of simpler game tree. The villain barrels a wide frequency. The hands he's giving up with are largely air, but some, mixed in with some strong hands to help get to showdown. And the hero is raising a bet with basically just 8-7 and Jack-8 diamonds and a few other Jack-8 combos occasionally, and then calling with a kind of wide range. So that's what we looked at in part 3. Some of the stuff we didn't talk about there at all that I'd like to get into is thinking about the calling ranges here. So if you remember from part 1 of this series, we talked about what a multi-street game tree looked like, and we said that you can't actually have a well-defined turn strategy unless you know what to do on every river. And so of course we can look at this and pick a river card and see what our strategy actually looks like on that river. But what I'd like to talk about a little bit before we start exploring how we play on some of these runouts is what the key factors are in constructing calling ranges where we want our range to be as strong as possible across as many runouts as possible. So a turn strategy needs to specify what to do on every river, like I said, and calling ranges have to be structured so as to produce strong ranges on as many runouts as possible. And a key theory concept that we'll see the practical side of when we start looking at these ranges is something that I call concavity of the nuts. And now, what does that mean? The basic idea is that say there were only 2 river cards that could come, card A and card B. Would you rather call with a range that had the nuts 10% of the time on card A and 0% of the time on card B, or say 5% of the time on card A and 5% of the time on card B, or any 2 numbers that sum to 10? You have 10% nuts total and you want to allocate it across card A and card B. What's the best way to do that? And it turns out that in pretty much every case I've ever looked at, I don't actually have like a proof that this is a global truth, but I think if you guys explore it, you'll also find that it's true. I've never actually found a counterexample to it ever that I can think of. That your best bet is never to try and have, all your nuts on one run out and none of the nuts on the other. You want ranges that hit the nuts, that diversify your nuttiness across run outs as best as possible. So something like 5% nuts on each of the two runouts is always going to be stronger.